All right. So I want to say, before I bring Phil Parrish up here, that if you guys want to help and volunteer for his campaign, you know that I'm always asking for people to help with doors and placing yard signs and helping with phone calls. So please, please, if you volunteer, let me know or let Phil know, name, address, phone number tonight, so he can get you on his list, all right? And I'd like to invite Phil Parrish up. He'll talk for a half an hour and then do Q&A. The next governor of the state of Minnesota. Woohoo!
Thank you. I think Pastor has me on the mic. It sounds like it's coming through. Yeah, all right. Thank you, Diana. All right, well, thank you very much for having me. I am Philip Parrish. Some of you have already met me. There's a few faces that I think are new to me, and I'm very happy that you're here. I'm going to try to make sure that I keep things simple enough where we can get to the Q&A and not bore you with the stuff that you already know. So those of you that know me, forgive me if I rewind a bit for those that are new. I'm born and raised here in southern Minnesota. I became a teacher, and then I became an administrator and public school. I taught music, kind of a secret that I was a music teacher, but I would go to a staff meeting and they say, "Oh, it's the new PE teacher." No, I'm the music teacher. And became an administrator, but in the meantime, I had joined the U.S. Navy Reserves. I was almost immediately deployed, and I spent just under 10 years as enlisted, and then took a commission and became a U.S. Navy intelligence officer. So I spent almost 22 years in the U.S. Navy. I specialized in counterterrorism and foreign policy. That led to a list of experiences and reasons why I decided to get more and more involved in politics. My first involvement with politics was in high school. Does anybody remember Steve Swigum? Yeah. So my first involvement in politics was getting involved in the caucuses and going to all the meetings and getting a chance to learn more about this. Especially in Minnesota, we were very proud of a grassroots process, and I was very excited about that. And in high school, I actually have the memory book that I created. Don't laugh at me, it's just a true story. But I had figured out during government class the year that I could first run for president. I still have it in my notes. And I fell in love with John F. Kennedy. Like it or not, I was just enthralled by what had gone on and very sad by what had taken place. But I became a Republican because at a very early age, I was very keen to the concept that we're a constitutional republic and that the principles of democracy do not exist without the rule of law. I want to repeat that because that is something very core to the problems that we're having right now, or the lack of that understanding is the core of why we have so much trouble right now. We are a constitutional republic. The principles of democracy do not exist without the rule of law, without the rule of the constitutional republic. So set that in your mind. So fast forward, where to start? My goodness. The best thing for me to make sure I advocate for is to get to the website, parishformn.com. If you don't have this little flyer that's out on the table, please grab one or pass one around and make sure that you kind of pass it around, make sure everybody has one. And if you get to that website, what I really want to advocate for is that you have the opportunity to really dig into what I'm talking about and why. In a speech, this is wonderful. I have an hour, and the Q&A is going to be very important to me. But even in an hour, are you going to get the depth of what you really want from me, and then the things that you want to stand behind and get excited about? So get on that website, go across the tabs, investigate, goes to the news tab, and really dig into all the pieces I've written on policy. And tell me, send me an email, because my email is in the contact tab. Send me an email, hey Phil, this looks great. Or hey Phil, wait a minute, what are you talking about here? Time out. And that will give us a chance to have a dialogue. I'm getting started early because I am that passionate about what we're doing and what we're facing. Again, I'm a Republican. This game that we've been witnessing, how many been involved with the Republican Party in some way, shape, or form? Almost everyone. Very good, thank you. What I'm about to do in this election cycle may seem a little bit shocking to some of those that have been involved with the Republican Party for the last 30 years. However, what I want you to do is really think about strategically why I'm going to do what I'm going to do. I am in this to win it. I am going to set the stage. I am going to play the game that I want to play. If you can imagine a football field with a set of teams, I'm going to be on the winning team. The team I've assembled is the winning team. And I'm not going to join any teams that are losing teams. I know that sounds a little vague, but I hope that makes sense to you, and maybe it'll come up during the Q&A. So, what are we really about? I want to reestablish a servant leadership. We have got to get back to when I am elected, government organizations are to serve the people. We are servants of the people, and I think we've lost that for a long time. You listen to Waltz even recently, and some of even yesterday's thing with the graduation. I had to turn it off because it was so upsetting. His physical posture, his language, his lack of respect for the people, it's just shocking to me. So the biggest reason I got involved in politics, not only about the servant leadership stuff, is because of the fraud. I'm one of the original whistleblowers for the daycare fraud in Minnesota. When I was in my last set of orders, I was in a special task force. I thought I was on my way to Syria, and I have a little bit of a joke I tell. I don't know if I passed the psych eval or I failed it, because one minute I thought I was on my way to Syria, the next minute I said, Commander Parrish, you're going to be headed to D.C. with a special task force. So the joke was, I don't know if I passed or failed the psych eval. but next thing I know, I'm in D.C., in Crystal City, pretending not to be in the military, wearing a suit and tie, and doing all kinds of task force work with all the branches of service and all of the law enforcement partners. So what that did for us is it gave us a chance to, when we had to get in front of leadership and say who, what, when, where, why. So one of the things that we stumbled upon was the fact that hundreds of millions of dollars were coming in and out of Minneapolis-St. Paul International Airport, going straight to the Netherlands, coming out of the Netherlands International Airport and going straight into the Huala network, funding terrorism, everything from persons to weapons and so on and so forth. Led to an interesting intuitive thinking, and then I started digging. Well, where is it coming from? Because we have to answer who, what, when, where, why. Well, I, as a U.S. military personnel, I can't see the names of U.S. persons or U.S. companies. So I know that sounds a little bit down in the rabbit hole, but think about this. I can see the reporting of how it's happening, where it's coming from basically, but I can't read as a U.S. military personnel, I can't read the specific names. But guess who can? My law enforcement partners. So we as a task force, to cut it short with that part of the story, we had the ability to tell leadership through the right partnerships, here's what's happening, here's why, and here's what we need to do about it. And we didn't get listened to. At the time, think about this, we're under the Obama administration, and was it any surprise that we weren't getting any traction about telling people? So I had an experience at one of my last large briefings. Some special operators that used to be out in the field is something my son wants to do. I used to be at the back end of the spear. My son, William, he leaves for the Marines on June 16th. He wants to be to the front end of the spear. Okay, so I'm on the back end, and I'm trying to prep special operators as to what's happening and to stay safe and who to go after and what to do, what not to do. Well, in that experience, some of these special operators, they knew I was headed home, and they knew that I was already politically active, and they pulled me by the ear and said, Phil, when you get home, don't you dare let this go. And they made me promise before I got out of that CIA building. They made me promise, don't drop it, Phil, because we've been suffering under this for years trying to tell people, and nobody's listening to us. So this is back in the winter of 2015-16, and I'm getting ready to come out of my last set of orders in 2017, got home in March. I kept my promise. So I'm one of the original whistleblowers for the daycare fraud. Why is that relevant? Fast forward to the COVID Feed Our Future fraud. What happened? The same exact business model that we had in the daycare fraud is the same exact business model, and most of the people on that list of indictments, most of those people are repeat from the daycare fraud. You can imagine how upset I've been for years. But here's the difference in my first run to this run. I was angry in my first run because I was that upset. What people are being told is such a lie. Now I can reflect to you, I'm not angry, I'm just that determined, because now we've had some progress by the grace of God. We've had President Trump, Pam Bundy, Kash Patel, and these people who are actually trying to do something about this. Pete Hegseth, God bless him, thank the Lord that he was confirmed. I believe in him 100%. Don't listen to the press. Don't listen to the press. Let me say it again. Don't listen to the press. They are absolute propagandists, purely propagandists. Think about this, just to fast forward, and then I'll come back to where I was. Who has been mentioned in the press so far about running for governor? Only two or three people. I did all my paperwork with the Minnesota Campaign Finance Board in December. Has the Minnesota press mentioned me other than a side note once in a while? No. Here's my point. I want to advocate that all of us, if you vote for me, God bless us. That's part of the team and that's part of the agenda. Thank you for voting for me and thank you for supporting me. But at the end of the day, more than anything else, I want people to understand how compromised our press is. The legacy media is nothing more than, in the military, what we would call a propagandist organization that is meant to influence, destabilize, and coerce the population into a narrative so that operations, be them covert or overt, operations can take place and be successful, because that information is the part of the operation to win. So we're going to bypass all that, and we already have. We have thousands of people that interact with me on all my social media. If you don't do social media, if there's one thing I can encourage you to do, get on X. Some of you may or may not like Elon Musk, but Elon Musk has done what he said. He hasn't lied about it. He's actually lost money because of it, but he's done what he said. And I hope you can respect that. And I hope you can respect that in each other and in your communities. Find people that do what they say. So back to where I was. The Feed Our Future COVID fraud was the same business model. And here again was a list of things that went wrong with no oversight. And you can look at life as happenstance. And nobody really knew what they were doing. Tim Waltz didn't really know what he was up to. It just happened. You can choose to look at it like that, but here's the problem. I know for a fact, because of my career and my position, I know for a fact that Tim Waltz, several Republicans, almost all of the leadership at the time and in the administration at the time, were including Mark Dayton, going back to the daycare fraud, they were told exactly what was going on. So here's my point about proven actions. You might not like somebody, but if they do what they say, that's important to you, and I hope it is important to you. They do what they say. These people were told, and they did nothing. Nothing at all. And no one has been held accountable. The Department of Human Services person that had direct oversight for the COVID fraud, she magically got paid off in the distance, and you never heard about her again. Isn't that magical? Now we fast forward to the Feed Our Future fraud, and guess what happens? They got a little clever with their business model, and I hope you're catching part of what I'm saying. The leadership, the administration knew they were implementing a fraud-ripe environment. And they got a little clever. Hey, we're going to put the oversight under the school district superintendent's office of each district, and we'll monitor and oversight the Feed Our Future COVID money under the superintendent. Well, guess what happened? It was blanket rubber stamp of receipts. Here's an example, and then I'll move on. Fairville, Minnesota, I didn't realize who I was talking to at the time, but I happened to have been talking to one of the district personnel employees, not knowing that they were sitting at the table. And I was like, I wonder, didn't anybody in the superintendent's office, and I'm using Faribault as an example, but there's hundreds of examples across the state, didn't somebody in their superintendent's office think to themselves, you know that building that we all know about, that you drive by almost every day to get to the district office? You can't feed that many children in that building? And where's the trucks that have been driving past that building to supply that building? And gee whiz, has the fire marshal been down to there? Because if they're feeding that many people and they have that many employees, the fire marshal probably has something to say. So who didn't ask? I didn't realize the person sitting across the table was one of the people from the district office. I got a little heat about a week later. Phil, what did you saying? You know, because it was embarrassing. But meanwhile, the indictments happen. The reason why I belabor that a little bit is because the basic business model is ripe for fraud from the state offices, from the administration, the lack of leadership. So one of the biggest points of this campaign is fighting the fraud. The second biggest, or maybe there's no first and second, is protecting our children. I am way past enough is enough. We are so intellectually and morally broken with what's going on. It is heart-wrenching. It makes me cry, literally, at times. I am all for loving people and caring for people. I'm using my son now. I brought him with. He didn't know I was going to embarrass him so much today. But the most loving thing I can do for my children is walk up to them and say, this is not happening. This is morally and intellectually broken. Stop it. They don't have to listen to me, but I did my job to stop as best I could or identify what is intellectually and morally broken. So protecting our children is right up there 1-2 with the fraud. They're interwoven, quite frankly, because the financial fraud is just as bad, or worse, is the moral fraud. And the moral fraud leads me to one of the campaign points, and it is moral fraud. I have several pieces on my news tab that I hope you read in depth, because the moral fraud is this concept or notion that we are being caring and loving by just saying anything goes. Moral corruptness is fine. We just love and hug you. It's okay. That's moral fraud. There's no compassion in that. That is actually causing harm. And when you participate in activities and organizations that cause moral decline or moral decay, that is, and I can say this, God bless you that I'm allowed to be here today, especially in the sanctuary, that's not right. And we will pay the price for that. Worse than anything else we can do in our life. I happen to be Catholic. In our opening prayers, forgive me for what I have done and what I have, thank you, failed to do. I woke up in December. My wife, God bless her, she's put up with my ramblings and carrying on for years now. And she could see the look on my face, and Phil, no, Phil, just stop. I know what you're going to say. And I don't remember what happened the few days before that, but she knew what I was up to. And my morning prayers woke up with, I don't remember if it was at Mass or if it was another event we were attending, but here I am, Lord, send me, was in my head. And that's where my prayers and hopes and prayers and dreaming and meditating came up that morning was, here I am, Lord, send me. Who am I? I'm just a southern Minnesota boy. Really born under a rock, barely left my home, till I was in my late 20s. But then obviously being in the military, I've been all over the world and back and seen all kinds of stuff, some very disturbing things. But here I am, Lord. Is there anybody in Minnesota, and this sounds boastful, but is there anybody in Minnesota that has done and has been where I've been? The answer is no. There's not a single, I know some good people that are like me, that have experiences like me, but they're not standing up. The other candidates that are listed officially in the Campaign Finance Board in Minnesota, they have nothing on me. I am a teacher. I taught school for 13 years. I am an administrator. Have been an administrator amongst being a military personnel for many years now, and I'm currently the executive administrator of Divine Mercy Catholic Churches and Schools. I have a lot to say about education. I have a lot to say about moral decay. I have a lot to say about fraud. And I have the expertise and the skills to actually do something about it. And there's not a single candidate in the atmosphere here or in the arena that has anything similar to what I've been doing and what I can offer. I know that sounds boastful, but I'm that proud of who I am and who God made me to be. And I know that that's what he did. Where I'm at, Diana. Okay, so about 10 minutes more of me rambling. So, fraud, protecting our children, and then completely decimating, like Trump and Elon Musk and Doge are doing, completely decimating the bureaucracy. Here's an example of the bureaucracy, and I did the research during my first campaign. I'm doing it again, and it hasn't changed much. But here's the problem with education. The problem is we have, if we took every single state employee that never sets foot in a classroom, and we took them out of the building and made them go to a district and made them be an active part of teaching children, we would have nearly a 1-to-7 ratio. What's the ratio in your public school districts right now? Typical. 30, 25, 30, 40 students per teacher. If you took every bureaucratic person that hasn't set foot in a classroom for the last 30 years and you stuck them in a district, you would have a 1-to-7 ratio. The reason why our private schools are so successful is because we're talking about 10, 15, maybe 20 students per teacher. And oftentimes in a private school, you also then have a teacher's aide or other support staff. Why is that successful? I don't need to preach that to you. You already know the answer to that. But you stick 40 students in a room where nobody really knows anybody, and then you go through 8 periods of day where you've just run through the little wickets, and you're all like little mice chasing the little cheese through the day. Are we surprised where we're at? And then you add in the completely morally and ethically bankrupt agendas of due north. I wrote a significant piece on Tim Waltz's due north in my news tab. I hope you find it. Very critical of the due north policies and the DEI and the LGBTQ plus and the inclusion and the equity. Isn't it interesting that all these fluffy terms that are meant to make us feel good and excite us about that we're doing so much, guess what happened since due north was implemented? Our schools are losing students. They can't keep good teachers. They can't find good teachers. So, and then we're going to feed every child in the state. Guess what? Feed everyone. Everyone gets to eat free. Guess what every district in the state is struggling with? The money, and the mandated policies are not funded. And they get on stage and they tell you about all the wonderful increases in funding, and it's not showing up at the district. It's not showing up for the students. I had a meeting with the Muslim community on yesterday, and they are extremely upset with where the Democrats have gone. Because, and some of you, I can see faces of skepticism here, but here's the deal. Whether you're Jewish, Christian, Muslim, I don't like the word Muslim because technically it's Islam, okay? Islam, Jewish, or Christian. Here's the unifying fact for all of us. We believe in the divine. We as Christians believe in Jesus Christ as our Lord and Savior. He is my Lord and Savior, period. Nobody can change that. I'll be like the old movie of Mel Gibson being sectioned and quartered. You can't change it, okay? I will defend Christ with my very life, every breath of me. But the unifying fact is the divine. We believe in God. Do we have any big problems with our Jewish brothers and sisters? They don't believe that Christ is our Savior, but they believe he's a prophet. Islam believes that Christ is a prophet. I choose to believe that Christ is our Savior. And I believe it with all my heart. I wish that they would believe that too. But my point is this. The Islamic community, the Jewish community, the homeschooling communities, the Christian communities, they're all frustrated as heck, and they've left the public school institutions and wanting to leave more. Now I even have data, which I was fighting with some analysis, a couple of friends and a couple of data sources I use. We actually have a huge amount of people departing Minnesota, but it's not showing up on the data streams yet. Why is that? Who do you think would be so invested in not telling you that we've had a mass exodus of Minnesota? Who would be so invested in hiding that data? Teachers union, Waltz, corrupt politicians, compromised politicians, and their handlers. And I call them handlers on purpose, and I'm using that as a military term. I'm very familiar with clandestine sources. I'm very familiar with CIA operations, FBI operations. Having a source that I operate and control and pay them to give me information. Sometimes when you pay people for information, they give you bad information on purpose to cause you to make decisions that you shouldn't have made and you wouldn't have made if you had the truth. So that type of stuff, believe it or not, is actually operating in our public school systems, in our political systems, in our agencies, our government agencies. That kind of behavior is actually operating in what we're doing in our state government, and it needs to stop. They need to go back to where I started my speech, servant leadership. We are to serve you, the people. We're not to serve some master who has the biggest pockets and the biggest agencies. Don't even get me started on COVID. I'm hoping it comes up in the Q&A. Because, and if we don't stand up and start talking about these very uncomfortable truths, we're going to be back to where we were. And I'll wrap up and go to Q&A with this. I know the political system in Minnesota very, very well. I stopped looking at it as just a citizen trying to be concerned and trying to inform people, and I started looking at it from my military career, my military experience. I started using the very skills that I was trained to do for operations overseas against bad people. Now, when I've stepped away and I've allowed myself or given myself permission to actually just be a citizen and use the skills I was trained to do and take a real hard look at people's behaviors, I'm a patterns guy. If I notice a pattern, you're going to have a hard time getting that bone out of my mouth, because I will figure out what that pattern's about, and I will figure out how to tell you who, what, when, where, why. And I won't drop it until I have all 5 questions answered. So I've allowed myself to step back and be an analyst, be a professional, and to be a leader. And I'm not worried about being lack of humility or being boastful. I'm telling you, I'm changing the game. I am not playing the divisive gang warfare of the last 30 plus years. Red against blue, Republican against Democrat, right against left, conservative against liberal. I'm not playing it. I'm just going to boldly come up and tell you the truth about what's going on. And I want to be a servant leader for the public. I want to be the leader that is actually engaged with the people of Minnesota. I'm going to lose people that have supported me or maybe never have supported me because of my stance on transgenderism or my stance on wind farms. You can't have a product that uses more energy than you allegedly saved, and then it's dead and gone, and you still haven't recovered from what you actually allegedly saved, and have that make sense. And those kinds of basic math, we can't allow that kind of a rhetoric to happen with our press anymore. So back to proof that our press is compromised, that's just one subject of hundreds where it's proof that it's just propagandists. Because if you were starting a business and somebody walked up to you and said, yeah, we're going to build this product, we're going to sell it for $10, and we're going to make like in the hole, and we have to have government subsidy to make a profit. You're going to look at me and say, yeah, I'm not getting involved with that business. You see what I'm saying? You can't continue to lie to the public about something so obvious and get away with it. So, fraud, protecting our children, and then getting rid of all the bureaucratic waste. Using education as the example, if you're not touching a child's life in a meaningful and productive way, you're not going to have a job. I know that's going to lose me all the teachers union. It's going to lose me all of the Department of Education, but I don't care. My job is to tell the truth. My job is to serve the people. That's purely what this is about. If anything I've said today that is more concise than that, I don't know what else to say. It's to tell you the truth and to serve the people. If something goes wrong because I did that, I can go to my Lord and Savior and know that I did what he asked me to do. With that, I'll just jump right into taking Q&A. Go ahead. Yep. So I'm very familiar with Minnesota politics. So we've all been familiar with how the Democrats run. They claim to have a grassroots process, but they don't. It's all dictated from on high. The Republican Party has maintained a grassroots organization. Unfortunately, and if you have questions about this, bear with me and ask me the details. Many of you have experienced that you go to the endorsement process, and every single election cycle, and I mean every single, I'm not hyperbole or exaggerating, every single election cycle, a group of Republicans or a group of patriots or conservatives fund a candidate that didn't get endorsed. So you have to eventually be smart enough to say, well, what's that about and why? Well, whether it's malicious, nefarious, or unintended, the bottom line is this. You have an endorsement process that ends in about May. I'm getting to your question. And then you have a primary in August. And what has happened every single election cycle? All the candidates waste all their time and money to get the endorsement. Then they have to fight the fight all over again and waste all their money to get to the primary. They're aiming at the wrong target. And my target is back to you. So we have, starting next week, we're having 87 ambassadors to match the counties. So there's going to be county ambassadors to every county. My team is built with a lot of people that think just like me, and a campaign manager and strategist. Heidi Wanty is the campaign manager. Jeff is the strategist, Jeff Cosman, and my chair of the committee is Dan Root. He's a lifelong friend of mine, childhood friend of mine, and he's extremely wise and experienced in the business community, banking, and agriculture. He was actually a high-level agriculture person for many years in the Department of Agriculture. So in this team that I'm building, in other words, I'm putting together the Kobe Bryant team, the Michael Jordan team, and we're going to kick the heck out of the LeBron James team, because LeBron James is nothing but fluff and media hype. There's nothing to him. So my plan is to fight the fight that I'm going to design. And my design is that we're going to the primary. We're going to fight for every single vote. I'm fighting for the people. I'm not fighting for a segment of people that don't really have the needs or wants of the people in mind. They have their own needs and wants. And I'm aiming at getting the votes of Republicans, Democrats, Independents, Green Party, anybody that'll come to an event like this from now. Well, it started in a few months ago, but we're already at the point where June is closed. I don't have any more room left to get to events. July is going to be closed fairly soon. August is already done and planned because we're going to spend a lot of time at fairs and the state fair. So I'm running as a Republican. I am filing as a Republican. I am a Republican, period. And I've talked to Alex Plekish about this. I'm happy to talk to him again about it. I exposed all of everything I'm saying to you right now to him. It is what it is. If Yep. Yep. And they have every year. So my argument. My strategy at the moment, my data at the moment, says that the label Republican or the label Independent or the label Democrat, my data says that the majority, what I define as the majority of Minnesota, they don't care. We just built a $16 million school in Faribault. And every single one of those employees on that work site, I have met or talked to every single one of them. And they don't care. They're sick and tired of the red versus blue, the right versus left, the conservative versus liberal. They're sick and tired of it. They just want somebody to walk up to them and tell them the truth about what's going on. So that's my strategy. Right. Right. So you're correct. As much as I love Donald Trump, and I don't ever want to disparage him, and I'm not disparaging him, but you're right. He would admit himself that he made mistakes. In fact, he's been on several programs saying that he made mistakes. And he took the advice of people, very poor advice from compromised people. The interesting thing about me is I've been so deeply involved with party structure and party politics in the state central leadership. I'm so deeply involved and knowledgeable of these people. I know who the snakes are. And they know that I know. And they're already very angry. And they're already taking steps to attempt to circumvent me. But correct, they're not going to get a position. The people that are in place are going to be gone. And I have a list of people in my head that I know and trust. Some of them are former military. Some of them are former educators. My campaign manager is a former educator who lost her job because she refused And she didn't get nasty about it. She just said, I'm sorry, but I'm not going to call you by your preferred pronouns. And within days of it getting around to the administration, she was removed from the building. She has a wonderful story to tell, a heroic story to tell, and she stood her ground. And God bless her, because that's the kind of people that we're going to have in the administration that have the ability. You don't have to be nasty. You don't have to be vulgar, but you can stand there and say, this is wrong. I'm not going to participate in it. Enough is enough. Are we going to have somebody that actually makes it through like Trump has done already? He's moved a couple of people recently. Did you see that? Very smart moves. The one gentleman, I can't think of his name, but now he's like the UK or the European. Mike Walls, he's the United Nations ambassador or something, a know-nothing job that he can just go away and disappear. You know, that's the kind of stuff we might have to do. But yes, we're going to clean house.
To the child care assistance program, which was, I believe, a good portion of feeding your children fraud, and that happened in every county in this state, and I know that personally because I worked in that level of community social services. And then also, what would differentiate you from your other running mates that they wouldn't also claim what you have on your media poster here?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Interestingly, I have experience in this very question because Jeff Johnson, although Jeff and I are friends, Jeff started using some of my bullet points from the first time around. And they will try it. Kendall will try to use some of my bullet points. The difference between Kendall and I is, like I said earlier, boastful or not, he has no meat to the subject. He has no depth. He doesn't have the experience and the background and the training that I have. And I don't know that he can say he has the autonomy to do what I'm going to do. I'm not obliging to anyone other than my Lord and Savior. The only person I have to please at the end of the day is God. I'm going to do my best to serve all our citizens, all of them, not a portion of them. Some are going to hate me for it, but I'm praying that the majority will love me for doing that. So he doesn't have the substance that I have. The child care dollars. So what has happened, like I was alluding to earlier, the lack of mechanism to assure that the dollars are doing what they are intended to do, the lack of oversight, and I don't want to imply that I'm going to add bureaucracy, but the lack of, here's the easiest way to articulate that. Elon Musk exposed something very simple at the federal level. Do you remember the story about, well, we asked them to just give us anything to prove that it happened, anything. And they went for days with no reply, and then, gee whiz, because you required a receipt, they stopped submitting for the bill. Do you remember that story? I don't care how simple that sounds to people, but you are required to submit the actual real bill. Is going to stop a lot of fraud. Because the Feed Our Future, and back to the daycare fraud, it was a rubber stamp. They just filled out a form, hey, give us this money, and they got it. No accountability at all. Do you realize that any one of us in this room, within 30 minutes, can get on the internet and get a state ID and a federal ID, never interact with a single real person, and we can have, at any address of our choosing, nobody verifies, a business started with an address, with a federal ID and a state ID in less than 30 minutes online. Tax IDs, the paperwork to start a business, Any one of us can start a business in less than 30 minutes and start. So the gentleman I met with yesterday, I won't say his name because God bless him, I think he's a wonderful man. He actually was almost into the Feed Our Future fraud, and he stepped back and said, I can't actually make this work. The formula and the model that you want me to sign up for and get approved to be a site to deliver food, I can't actually make that work. Now, he stepped back and he knew some of his brothers and sisters, and he started asking questions. So then he went back to the state and said, I don't know about what these other people are doing, people that got indicted, but you can't make money doing this. You can't even pay for your staff to do this. So then he figured it out. His site that he got approved to be a distributor, turned out 3 other organizations had already used his address. So to your point, there is such a grave disparity in integrity in the system. And I'm sorry, but even the public feed all the kids for free is built and ripe for fraud. Because guess how you're going to make money? Now, I'm not accusing any school district superintendents. Don't get me in trouble. But if I'm a superintendent running a budget and I don't have integrity, and I know that I need butts in seats, and I know that I need 100 students, I'm just making up numbers to prove the point. I need 100 students to make this work, but I really only have 50, but I'm going to charge for 100 so that I can make the finances work. Do you think somebody would do that? Most of us in this room probably wouldn't. But they do it every day. And I'm not picking on school districts because they've got lives to try and run, staff to try and pay, students to try to educate. But the opportunity for fraud is so blatant, nobody is doing anything about it. I hope that answers your question.
So your neighborhood is Faribault?
I live outside of Kenyon. We have a small farm, and I work in Faribault. I've lived in this area all my life, except for when I was overseas. I was overseas for 11 years.
Well, in the last election, what did you do to contribute to getting people elected?
Yeah, so I chose in the last election cycle to be way more behind the scenes, and I worked very closely, or tried to work very closely with Royce White. I don't know how you feel about Royce White.
Well, you got 2 points there.
I privately, I am very fond of Royce White. I know publicly some of the vulgarity and some of the, I don't know if I would act that way or behave that way, but I tried to help Royce White behind the scenes.
In general, if you want my vote, I need to see you in debate, because you can tell me anything you want here.
And I can't
and
wait.
I've told that to many candidates.
Yep.
The other thing too is Qualls, I believe, I'm not certain, but I'm pretty sure that he's deeply involved in the inner city, which is where we have all the votes that are beating us. So he does have some good points. And I'll just leave it at
Okay.
that.
So I'm not going to hopefully offend you, but I would suggest to you that you're operating under a mindset that has been given to you by propagandists. I'm not saying that Kendall doesn't have inroads in the Twin Cities. I know he has inroads in the compromised group. I know that for fact because of my relationships with people. But we have much more access to the Twin Cities than what you've been told. In fact, the first half dozen meetings I had were all in the Twin Cities. My meeting yesterday was right in the heart of Minneapolis. So what you're being told by the public, I want you to back up, rewind. I want you to get to that website, and I want you to investigate all the subject and the depth of what I've been writing about and why.
I'm looking forward to listening to you.
We got a new one over here, so and then we'll come back to you.
Hi, thank you for being here today. My question revolves around my passion for children. I have been a pediatrician for 42 years, and I think what I have been exposed to through my patients of what goes on in the schools gives me grief. And I think our children are being indoctrinated. Children are told you don't have to be a boy. They're told all sorts of awful things that I won't even repeat.
Mm-hmm.
And these are from teachers.
Correct.
And so my big question is, what would be your strategy, sort of 1, 2, 3, what would be your approach to the Department of Education to save our children?
Yep. So please, please, please read the piece. It's like the second or third one down on the news tab. Read the full piece, because the depth of that, there's no way I can explain in a short time. But I will tell you this. If I am fortunate enough to win as governor, there will be, like President Trump has done, a complete upside down of the table. I will be walking in like Christ in the temple and turning over tables. You know, I used to be very shy about saying that, because we're all taught as Christians to be such loving and caring and almost like pacifist enablers. And I don't want to lose that. I don't want to lose the compassion of Christ. I don't want to lose our compassion and our love for people. But there's another part of the story that we very seldom talk about. He was crucified for telling people the truth. Enough is enough. Stop behaving like this. That isn't necessarily in our picture of what we like out of leaders, that, oh, they need to be kind and soft and loving. No, I'm not going to be rude and disrespectful, and I'm not going to be vulgar, but you're going to need to explain to me what you're doing. And like I said earlier, if you aren't having some kind of a meaningful interaction with and contribution to a child's life, you're going to have to explain to me why you need to be there. A. B, all this DEI, all this, Governor Walz very clearly spells out everything he's doing in his policy called Due North. It's gone on day one. All of it's gone. So please read the piece and share it with others. Give me feedback.
2 questions. What happened to your Freedom Talk with Phil? I haven't seen that for a long time.
Yeah, thank you for
And
mentioning that.
how do you get out in front of groups like this Indivisible thing, where they shut you down?
So, remind me your first name. Kurt. So, Kurt's referring to, has anybody else seen my program called Freedom Talk with Phil? A few people? So, I started a program called Freedom Talk with Phil, podcast, that I started running in 2017, and periodically have done it ever since. There's literally thousands and thousands of hours of video on. I've been a little bit more focused on, not just a little, a lot more focused on Parish for Governor. I still use the Freedom Talk with Phil channel, but the effort is more specifically to the campaign. So I'll do some of my own videos. You'll see lots out there on social media if you use social media. If you don't, remember, I'm encouraging you, if there's one that you should get an X account. And how do we stop from getting shut down? Again, whether you like or hate Elon Musk, that's your choice. All I can tell you is proof in the pudding. I'm a little bit of a data geek, and I can tell you for a fact that since Elon Musk took over Twitter and calls it X now, there's this, bore you to tears, I'll be brief, but behind the scenes, the data geeks, the programmers, the ones that build the algorithms, they've been very clever over history of controlling and manipulating what you see. Has anybody seen, how many people use Facebook? Have you seen a little bit improvement in some of the people that you like to listen to are more readily in your stream? That's not a mistake. It's not accident. X, for sure, if you get on X, all of that squashing and stifling of the message, almost all of it is gone. And when the bad guys and gals try to stifle, now it's very easily discernible. And Elon Musk people, they go after them. You're not going to have this algorithm bots shut people down and do all kind of crazy reports to get your account shut down. Elon Musk and his team doesn't allow it to happen anymore. I hope that helps. Indivisible. How do I counteract? Get ahead of them. Yeah. I don't want to pretend to be the algorithm specialist, but I'm a little bit, I'll put it this way. One of my jobs in the military, I was in disseminations, and bear with the story for a minute, it's relatable. We discovered, myself and a few of the IT team, we discovered that our own U.S. government was stifling all Republican websites. So I call up the J6. J6 is the IT guys in the Army. I call the J6, what's going on here? They give us, Commander, no problem, they gave me no secrets, no big deal. They gave us the list. And this gentleman I worked with, his name was Harry. Harry and I looked at the list and we said, Harry, every single one of these websites is listed as a malicious gaming site. And so the entire system was blocking in the firewall, shutting down every site that was listed as a malicious gaming site. Were they malicious gaming sites? No. What I'm trying to get at is, I'm not the algorithm specialist on earth, but I know enough about the bad operators that we can find ways around them.
To augment Kurt's question, Rochester's local politics has been taken over by nonprofits. Originally, it was Isaiah. They had a subsidiary called Faith in Minnesota, and recently Indivisible, which is like national. Two founders are from Carleton College in Northfield. And so an observation from the last election is that even though our city, county, and school board members are nonpartisan, their percentages are almost exactly like the national level candidates. And so even if we look at, let's say, 25A and 25B, very different candidates, very different campaigns, they have the same exact percentage as the national level. Kind of a question of what you're getting along to is that, in my opinion, I believe that the mainstream media bias and misinformation is probably the largest way that the liberals and globalists cheat on our elections. Smith-Month Act, or Smith-Month Modernization Act of 2012, and possibly getting rid of the Fairness Doctrine back in 1987. As governor, do you think there's any way that you would want to approach media bias misinformation?
Absolutely. So my hope is, by the way, I'm banking on what has happened at the federal level. I'm banking on it. And we could gamble wrong. It's a gamble, but I'm banking on it. With the exposure and the removal of most, if not all, the dollars of USAID, and reminder, if you don't know already, U.S. aid, they like to properly call it, is not U.S. aid. USAID was set up for the sole purpose to fund all these non-government agencies and LLCs. And everything that Elon Musk and the Doge team has exposed, multiply that times 10 in your imagination. I'm banking on that the groups that you mentioned, and a lot of Waltz's, part of the reason Waltz is losing his mind, and he's really, if you've watched any videos of Waltz lately, he has lost his mind. He's doubling and tripling down on agendas that make no sense to Democrats, especially independents, Green Party, Marijuana Party. Marijuana Party is going, that's the craziest thing I've ever heard. He is afraid of getting caught because here's the bottom line, and this is again back to my meeting yesterday with the Islamic community. They know that they know. Ilhan Omar is as crazy nuts off the charts as she is because, and they didn't prosecute, and they aren't finishing the indictments. I pray with everything that I am that the new U.S. Attorney General gets into office, which he's going to be confirmed if he's not already. Does anybody know lately? The new U.S. Attorney? They didn't actually prosecute any of the indictments yet. Why? The gentleman that I met with yesterday, who's remaining nameless, because they know that every single one of them, including Walsh and Ellison, are going to be implicated in those indictments and those prosecutions. They're not going to finish the prosecutions. They're not going to, because they know for fact. So Tim Walz, Keith Ellison, Ilhan Omar, all of them are going to suffer a dramatic loss in revenue and funding. The groups that you mentioned are going to be decimated. And when Act Blue, when they get done with Act Blue, if somebody doesn't go to prison, please make sure I get to be governor, because somebody's going to be going to prison. Because Act Blue is the most fraudulent. Do you know how many Social Securities in this state alone, Social Security numbers that are completely fake? Do you know how many of you have actually, it's so rampant that I can almost guarantee 100% that one of you have given to Act Blue. You want to know how I can say that? Because the list of $1, $5, $10 multiplied by 100 days in a row at people that have no clue. What's his name that does all the behind the scenes videos? O'Keefe. Yep. Multiply that by unimaginable numbers. People that have given to Act Blue. And here's why I know this so comfortably and can tell you that it's true. Because even in our campaign finance board, do you know that I only have to I could so easily commit fraud in the campaign finance board submission to what I've been given for campaign fundraising. It is so easy for me to make up names and addresses and take in money from wherever. It's insane how easy it is. I would never do that, but Act Blue is doing that every day. Yep. Right. Correct. And it's that bad times unimaginable numbers.
So I am a firm believer in the fact that the voter fraud in this state is far more rampant than anybody is willing to admit. Not to mention the fact that the deck is stacked against anybody trying to push back against it. How do you plan to overcome that?
So I have it's actually down the list. It's probably on the second or third page. Might even be on the fourth page for now. I do a lot of writing. Might even be on the fourth page of the news tabs, but I have an election integrity piece that I wrote. Please go find it and read it, because the depth there is just insane amount of depth. The election integrity issues are so dramatic that it's hard for people to actually listen to, because it's so overwhelming. Emotionally and intellectually, it's so overwhelming. So let's just take one aspect. In Minnesota, the Democrats have done inhuman things to assure that 18 years old to 22 are all registered as Democrats, not only at their college that they're attending, but at their home of residence as well. It's provable fact, which Steve Simon has been told repeatedly and does nothing about. So there's, for every 2,000 college-age students, for every 2,000, there's 4,000 votes. And I'm just using that number to illustrate. The numbers are way beyond that. Like the federal government discovered with regards to Social Security payments, there's people that are 100, 150, 230. What was anybody remember what the oldest person they found on the records was? Something like 300 and some odd years old. So the voter rolls in Minnesota are so compromised, and Steve Simon has done nothing about it. What was the group that was running around doing all kinds of suing the state? What was the name of that group? They were doing a bunch of suing of Steve Simon and the state to get the rolls cleared. Here's the really crazy thing in Minnesota. When they allegedly clear the rolls, the schedule that they use to clear the rolls, guess when that happens? After the Secretary of State is already printing the next cycles of ballots. How does that make sense to anybody? So what are we going to do? Again, it's a gamble, but why I'm so sure about the game plan that I have, the arena that I'm designing to fight in, I'm so comfortable in saying this is because I'm banking on Donald Trump, Pam Bundy, Kash Patel, and I'm banking on that piece that I wrote. Go find it, Election Integrity, and read the full thing. I actually wrote an open memorandum to President Trump. I'm not saying that I had anything to do with his executive order. I'm not saying, out there in the universe of watching this, I'm not saying that I had anything to do with it, but I wrote my memorandum and issued it to the president. I sent it publicly. I sent it to the office. I sent it to Kash Patel. I sent it to Pam Bundy. My open memorandum listing in detail of how election fraud is happening in Minnesota. I did that on March 16th. His executive order was about 45 days later, and there's 2 points in my memorandum that are directly tied to his executive order and the recommendations that I gave with regards to election integrity. I'm banking on the president. I'm banking on Pam Bundy. I'm banking on Kash Patel. And I'm praying that it comes true. Because if his executive order holds, there's a list of people in the voter rolls that are just gone. They'll be removed immediately. Or the state of Minnesota, Steve Simon, will be prosecuted by President Trump and Pam Bundy. We're getting on the hour, I bet.
Close. Two things on the election integrity. I did personally 14,000 calls in the past election. I can tell you for a fact that probably 70% of the phone numbers were wrong on the list. They were so out of whack it wasn't even funny. But as far as your campaign, I wanted to bring this up because the last time you were down here and talked, I remember you said something that really stuck with me, and that is this. This man is not only very, very honest, he said, quote, "I will never lie to you," unquote. I don't know how many politicians you guys can tell me that have been able to say, "I will never lie." His integrity is off the charts. And my question for you is this, just tell everybody in a couple of sentences or whatever, what your background in the military, how do those qualities and things that you did in the military help you to be a good governor?
So, again, I'm a counterterrorism specialist. I'm an analyst. My job was to dig into information, even the painful information, and tell people the truth. The commanders had a responsibility to listen to myself and the teams. They did. There's oftentimes they didn't. I've nearly gone to I did go to captain's mast once, nearly 2 more times. They tried to run me up the flagpole and get rid of me. I wouldn't back down. Like I said, imagine the scene of Mel Gibson, section and quarter him. I'm not going to back down. The commander that I had to report on, came in. They asked me a direct question. Then it was Lieutenant JG. Lieutenant JG, what's the deal here? And did you see this? What did you see? And I'm not going to lie. I told the commander of the base exactly what I said. Within a week, I was in a congressional investigation, and NCIS was on base asking me questions. We got done with the interview, and the alleged, Phil could go to prison type thing. And they closed the books, turned off the microphone, and the investigator looks at me and says, "Lieutenant JG, this will be in your record. It will not be permanent. As long as nothing else goes on, it'll be gone within a few years. And by the way, wink, 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 thank God you did what you did." I don't know if that describes part of what I'm about, but please understand, I am a person that in just nearly 22 years of service, I've been poisoned twice. My youngest child was abducted internationally. He's sitting here. Sorry, William. Do you remember the movie, Liam Neeson's movie, Taken? 6 months of my life was that movie. I promise you I never killed anybody. I didn't kill anybody. But I don't know, Diana. I have, as emotional as it sounds, I'm a born-again Christian. And I read Romans chapter 8 when I was in confirmation class. From a broken family, I went to bed hungry more than fed from like 4th grade until, well, college. I was really hungry more than fed. I've worked 2 or 3 jobs almost all my life. And I took on chapter 8 as I literally, in that moment, as crazy as it sounds to the non-believer, I took on God as my father, Christ as my brother, and Mary as my mother. No disrespect to my mother and father. But that's how I lived. And the only reason I've been able to stand alone sometimes, and I try to impress this on my young man, is that if I didn't have my relationship with our Lord and Savior, I can honestly tell you with every fiber of me, I would have killed somebody or myself. That's the dark places I've been in my life. And if it weren't for my relationship with Christ, I would not have been able to stand there alone, being persecuted and lied to, lied about, ridiculed, made fun of. I had a dozen death threats during my first run for governor because of being a daycare fraud whistleblower. A dozen. You know who the number one threat was to my life? And the most credible one was from right here in Rochester, Minnesota. A white female of about 70 years old. I don't mean for that to be an insult. I'm just telling you that there are people out there that yeah, so Jeff Cosman, a designated prayer team. Jeff Cosman, strategist, is also very open faith. And it's interesting, I didn't ask him to do this, but he says a prayer every morning, puts it in a text message and sends to the team every morning. And I didn't solicit that, but it's become a day. Actually, if I don't see it now, I'm actually like, Jeff, what's going on? But yeah, I have a prayer team. I think the prayer team is going to grow. I hope you'll be a part of that prayer team, whether it's spoken or unspoken. I know that my prayers are endless. I have this behavior when I'm feeling a bit anxious and a bit uncomfortable or a bit unsure of myself. I do something I call behavior replacement, and I start saying the Lord's Prayer over and over and over again until I forget. Wait a minute, where am I at in the Lord's Prayer? And then eventually that clicks in. Okay, I've realized I'm back to where I need to be, but prayer is. I don't even have the words to describe how important prayer is.
You know, Trump put together a team, and I understand the first time. I don't hold it against him because I think he was, he learned and he learned well from it. And he put together a team, and the team he has, they stand together. And, they say all this crap about him, but, when they get together, I think every one of them is hand to hand. They're for each other, and they're not going to take anything from anybody. Now, I'm going to ask you, you don't have to say, but if you got a team, you can't do it by yourself. And I like what you're saying, but we need a team, and we need a team that sticks together, and we will pray.
Yep.
I do this every Tuesday night in Wanamanga. We pray. Yep. We pray against what's going on in Minnesota,
Yep.
and we're praying against these people to be removed. And I believe in prayer. I'm a pastor,
Yep.
but my whole thing is, do you have a team?
Yes, we do. I'm almost emotional to say this because again, to me in my head and heart, sometimes I'm just that kid in West Concord, Minnesota, trying to get through high school, still in here. And I'm quite emotional actually about the number of, in my first campaign, I'll call her Suze. Her and her boys were extremely important to me in my first campaign, as well as Diana. But Suze was very important, and she reached out to me the other day and sent me this email that put me in tears. That has happened times hundreds. I know some of you probably don't use maybe the social media stuff. I use too much of it maybe. My wife gives me a hard time. But I don't just use it and just, oh, that's nice. You'll see me and I actually get compliments about it. I'm actually interacting with people real time, and then I'm asking them to call me and email me. When I reach out in a Facebook or an X or a Truth Social and I say, hey, will you please give me a call? The majority of those people call me. One of the things that and Diane, I can say this because she agreed before I started. One of the things that we're going to do for the team is starting next week, because we already have quite a few, we're going to start a tab on the website, and it's the county ambassadors. So 87 ambassadors for the parish for governor campaign are going to be on that list, and they're going to be a contact for the campaign as part of the team in that county. So there will be, in the coming weeks, or might take, I think it'll take maybe a month or so, because of the reach we have across the state, we're going to have 87 ambassadors on that county level. And every one of those ambassadors will be, I will trust them, because the majority of them that I'll know and have met them in the last several years. There might be a few that get sneaked by me and they're maybe not genuine, but the majority of them I'll know. And those 87 ambassadors to all the counties will be extremely important to the team. But between Jeff and Heidi and Dan Root and Carla Wolf and the ambassadors that I have already, Diana, we have a pretty solid team, and that's part of why I'm so comfortable that the other guys don't have a chance. Because we're playing chess, and they're playing checkers with a bunch of old people that have done the same thing the same way in the old checker game. I've learned from Trump. I'm not going to lie to you. I'm not ashamed to admit that. And I have read most of his books. And along with a whole lot of other books that have gone completely out of my mind. But the bottom line is, we're playing chess, not checkers. And the other guys are playing checkers, and they won't have a chance. It's already started. She asked when the ground game starts. So the ground game has already started, and it's not a surprise that some people don't know it yet. I'm really banking on all of you that are genuinely interested. You start telling people, calling people, writing people, sharing the website. Find a piece on the news tab that you really like and share that news tab piece. Just copy and paste the link, copy and paste the title, and just share that piece, share it and share it and share it. You will be amazed. So I put out a thing on Waltz the other day, and I very rarely use boosting. You know what I mean by boosting? You can pay for it to be boosted. I very rarely use that. Completely organic, all of a sudden hit 100,000 plus. And even I was like amazed. I don't know what I said right. I don't know what particularly caught people's eye, but for whatever reason, and that's how we're going to get around the media. That's how we're going to get around the compromised. That's how we're going to get around what I call the handlers, is we're going to get out there and do business differently. Again, we're paying chess, not checkers. Yeah. Okay. We're good, Deanna? We're good? Okay. Thank you very much. Remember to go to the website. I have a $1 challenge for change, it's called. If you find it on the website, or you find it on social media, or you just look it up on parishformn.com, $1 change challenge to change Minnesota. $1 challenge is called. If you have $1, please send $1 to the team. Please send $1 to the campaign. And you can do that via electronically. I use Stripe. It's an electronic thing, very non-invasive. Just click and go. Or we have a post office box, P.O. Box 132, Faribault, Minnesota, 55120. So it's on the website on the contribution tab. So if you go to the website, if you forget that, I don't expect you to remember that, but go to the website and you can share. Good? Thank you. Well done. Thank you. And thank you for letting me be here. Okay. Yes, too many things. You can connect with most of it on the website.
The church is doing it for me. So. Well, thank you so much. And I'll be in contact with all of you guys. I know who you are now. And I'll be finding out if you want to help with phone bank or door-to-door or yard signs or whatever for him as well. But also, like he said, sharing on Facebook is really a big deal. Before we introduce the next speaker, Dan and Ted's movie night, quite a few of you go. is Thursday, May 22nd. And the movie is Common Ground on Regenerative Agricultures. At Godfather's Pizza, the doors open at 5 o'clock and the movie starts at 5:30. I went to the last movie on JFK assassination. It was excellent. So if you want to enjoy a night out for pizza and go to a great movie, write down Thursday, May 22nd at 5 o'clock, Godfathers. All right? Did you want to introduce Nate? I'm going to have Terry Husser introduce our last speaker.
Nathan, we met a couple of years ago, and I was listening one evening to something with Donald Trump, and this veteran was talking to him about some program that needed to be put in place because there was corruption and stuff going on there. And the president said at one point, he said, I agree with you, we're going to do something about this, and I'm going to make you part of the administration of it. Because what the gentleman was saying is, this is going on, we can correct it, but then if we don't watch it like a hawk, it's going to go right back to where it's. So this gentleman that's coming now, Nathan, Linda and I have been part of this for a while. When we get back to the Republic, which I believe we actually are, that means that we will have real grand juries. If we don't have real grand juries, we're going to go right back to where we are, where the judges just get a whole bunch of people, call them a grand jury, so that they get the results from what they want. So you're going to learn here now what this is in a real grand jury, the public doesn't even know who the people are. That way they can't be tampered with, and they're just watching. And when they start seeing stuff that isn't right, they say something's wrong here. The grand jury gets together, and they file charges against these people. So this is what we're going to learn here. When we get our republic back, which I believe we have, it's just not been announced, that Trump is going to take care of a lot of this stuff. A lot of people are going to prison or going to be executed. But then we have to have our county grand juries to keep people so they don't go corrupt. So this is Nathan. He's the county rep. Yeah, we'll get him going.
Okay. Oh, there we go. So we're going to start out with a video. It was kind of typical. I'm sorry if you've already seen it, but it's a pretty short video with Jeff Calhoun as our marketing director for Tactical Civics. He's just going to share a little bit about the vision and the mission, and then we'll do some Q&A. So that I promise I won't take up a whole bunch of your time tonight, but I just want to make sure we're answering any questions that you have. Terry said it the best. As they fix some things on the national level, it's going to depend on us on the local level if we want to see real change. And that's where Tactical Civics comes in. So, yeah, let's get going on. Oh, hang on one sec. Sorry. Oh, sorry. Mute.
Hello, my name is Jeff Calhoun. I'm the Regional Coordinator and National Spokesperson for Tactical Civics. You're here to learn more about our mission. So for the next few minutes, I'm going to give you a basic overview of who we are and share some of our core values and strategic goals. Tactical Civics is a Christian private member organization with over 5,000 members in over 1,300 counties across America. And our numbers are growing daily. Our mission is the result of 45 volunteers investing over 80,000 hours of research and development to craft the only full-spectrum, lawful, long-term, peaceful plan to arrest organized crime and corruption in our federal and state palaces, and even in our county and local governments. You see, friend, in our system of self-governance called popular constitutionalism, which the founders gave us, we, the people, occupy the highest office in government, above presidents, above legislators, above judges. It is in we, the people, collectively that sovereign power rests. And our elected servants are supposed to be at all times accountable to us as they execute the clearly defined duties that we delegate to them. But that system has been captured, corrupted, and turned upside down to the extent that we act like serfs and subjects, and our servants assume their offices with a pervasive sense of entitlement to rule, like overlords of their own individual fiefdoms. Well, it's time to restore sanity and the rule of law in America, to remind every person who holds an elected office that in American civics, we the people are the boss. So, the question that Tactical Civics has sought to answer is, how exactly did we get here? And what we've diagnosed are three fundamental problems that have resulted in the unimaginable degree of criminality and corruption that we're subjected to on a daily basis. And for each problem, we have a clear solution. The first problem is a spiritual problem. The second is a legal problem. And the third is political, but probably not in the way that we're conditioned to think about it. So, the first problem. And really, this is where all of our problems begin. Friends, we in America, over the last several generations, have turned our backs on God. We decided that we didn't need to honor and glorify our good and gracious God, to seek His wisdom and guidance. Instead, we put man at the center. And we sought the glory and honor of man and determined that we would do things our own way. Well, God let us have our way. And He withdrew His hand of blessing. And right now, we are reeling under the consequences of His judgment. Here's the thing about spiritual problems. They are incredibly resistant to non-spiritual solutions. So, what's the solution? Well, it's simple. It's one word. Repentance. And repentance is an action word. We have to confess our sin of apathy and inaction, of choosing comfort over calling, of ignoring evil, and neglecting the requisite duties of we who are responsible to preserve the liberties given to us by God. That's why our first pillar in our mission in Tactical Civics is to honor Jesus Christ. In the words of Patrick Henry, the trumpet of liberty, quote, "It cannot be emphasized too strongly or too often that this great nation was founded not by religionists but by Christians, not on religions but on the gospel of Jesus Christ. For this very reason, peoples of other faiths have been afforded asylum and prosperity and the freedom of worship here," unquote. So friend, today is the day to pray the one prayer that God will always answer. And it's simply this: God, search my heart and see if there be any hurtful way in me, and lead me in the everlasting way. So the second problem that we've diagnosed is a legal problem. And it really is simple to understand. No one is enforcing our Constitution, which is our supreme law. For generations since Lincoln, we the people have failed to keep our republic. We've not enforced our Constitution, and the result of this has been rampant criminal violations of the Constitution by our elected servants. And we see it daily in Washington, D.C. And here's the funny thing about criminals. They never seem to arrest themselves. So, what's the solution? Tactical Civics is forging a movement, soon to be in every county in America, of a responsible, repenting remnant of we the people to implement Constitution enforcement. So we will do that by utilizing the two primordial law enforcement tools that we stipulate to ourselves in the Constitution. Through our two model county ordinances, we will have constitutional county grand jury and lawful militia operational in every county. You see, grand jury has always been a bulwark of the people against tyrannical and oppressive overreach of government. It was absolutely central in our struggle for independence. And it's exclusively under the aegis of the people, independent of any apparatus of the courts. And according to one of the great American legal scholars and first Supreme Court justices, James Wilson, the investigatory scope of a grand jury is only limited by its own diligence. Tactical Civics will restore in every county the constitutional authority, independence, and investigatory scope of the People's Panel, the county grand jury. And then we will help organize lawful county volunteer militia to, quote, bear the sword, unquote, for the grand jury. We the people will hold our elected servants accountable for criminal violations of the law. Now, finally, the political problem that's probably not what you think it is. Albert Einstein once said that the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over, but expecting different results. You see, we've been chasing solutions through election cycle political theater for generations. And far from solving problems, with each passing election cycle, we've seen the criminality of Washington, D.C. grow deeper and spread its tentacles wider over every level of government, both state and local. One of Congress's many crimes happened in 1929, when they effectively stripped representation away from the American people. Right now, in America, the average ratio of representation is one representative for every 750,000 people. There are some districts where one representative is representing nearly 1 million souls. Friends, that's not representation, and that's not what the founders envisioned, and that is one of our biggest problems. We don't have representation. Did you know that President George Washington spoke only one time concerning one issue at the Constitutional Convention? What was the issue that compelled him to address the delegates when he was so reluctant to do so? It was the guarantee of small representative districts. It was this guarantee that's found in Article 1, Section 2, Clause 4 that led the framers as they drafted the original 12 amendments in our Bill of Rights to make the goal of preserving small representative districts the subject of our original first right in the Bill of Rights. But due to controversy in the state of Connecticut, after they had ratified this amendment, their notice of ratification was never delivered to Congress. As a result, our original first right, the guarantee of small representative districts, is still a pending amendment awaiting ratification. Now, in Phase 3 of our strategic plan, Tactical Civics chapters all over America will make their state legislators do their duty to ratify our original first right and restore small representative districts. For the first time in our history, the 31,000 small towns across America's heartland will finally have a voice. Now, I know that you are probably subjected to a daily dose of fear porn and the sky is falling hysteria. But let me tell you, you are living in the very best time to be alive. God is moving in the hearts and minds of everyday Americans to turn their hearts back to Him, to commit to do the work necessary to restore the authority that we the people stipulate to ourselves in the Constitution, to enforce it, and to reclaim our original first right of small representative districts. Tactical Civics has a detailed 4-phase strategic plan to accomplish these very goals and more. I hope that you'll prayerfully consider stepping forward and rolling up your sleeves to do the chores and join our mission. May God bless you, and may God bless America.
All right. So I know some people here have seen that before, so questions? Yep. So there's like literally daily Zoom calls available where people from all across the Republic get together on a Zoom call and kind of learn the process. And, locally, we do our best to get together and have coffee and breakfast. Everybody's running around very busy, so it doesn't happen a lot. But we have seminars like these where we try to come in together as a team. I think you have one in Owatonna coming up. June? Okay. Oh, July. Okay. Perfect. So we host different seminars around the area for people to come and fellowship and get to know one another. But this is the beauty of Tactical Civics. It's county-wide governance. So it's holding responsibility to the commissioners and the local mayors and those people who are supposed to be representing us that don't on a localized level. No, I hear it. You go, yeah. Yeah. It's not just them, it's all of them that are actively in politics for the past 75 years, 100 years even. They go to their granite domes, and so the Tactical Civics is based on education. So it's helping everybody kind of understand how we get here, what's going on, why is it so disconnected? How come people can have well intent and go get involved in politics and be inactive? If they're well intended, they're inactive in politics. They're sidelined. They can't stand up and cause waves and destroy everything like they're doing on the federal level right now without being murdered or set aside, and it's been going on for generations now. So people they're disconnected from the reality of the Constitution. People like Mayor Norton and a slew of others on both sides of the aisle, left and right. What Phil was talking about people are sick of it. Everybody is. We're sick of it. It's a bunch of garbage, and all they do is talk, and they keep doing the same thing over and over and over again. So the reality is, until we make a difference on a local level, it'll never change. It's just going to keep getting worse. It will change. It'll keep getting worse. Mm-hmm.
So I'm asking probably a pretty big question, like how do you bullet point this? Unless this is what it is.
Yeah,
but
you were out.
But do you actually set up a meeting with the mayor, with the county commissioners? You go in and you educate.
So nope, this is outside of that whole system. Okay. So when there's enough people, so in the Bible, in the Old Testament, in Kings, there's a story of Gideon, who, they took 30,000 people and went to go fight the Philistines, I think it was, if I remember right. And God said, that's too many people. And so he ended up getting it down, and there's this whole story about it. But he ended up going with 300, and God confused them, and they had victory. And so the goal of Tactical Civics is to get half of 1% of the population in every county. And when we have that much, it's 870 people in Olmsted County. When we have that many people, we can address the commissioners, who actually is more important than the mayor, to be honest with you. And so when we have that many people in our county that can stand up and learn the material, understand what we're talking about, understand how the grand juries work. If you look at the one that says indictment engine on here, action number 6, that's a proprietary patented technology that analyzes bills before they're actually submitted against the Constitution with AI. And so charges, they'll either have an opportunity to withdraw the anti-constitutional legislation, rewrite it, but if they move forward with it, indictment charges will be brought against them. And so this has to do with a building block of gathering enough people to make a difference, because they will. People that are in power now will say, he said criminals don't arrest themselves, and there's a reason for that. One of the biggest cartels in our country, in the world probably, is our government. All the way down to the mayors and the governors, and you name it. This is a bad state, and I love it. I lived here my whole life. I refuse to leave.
So in my viewings on YouTube of state national people getting stopped by the police, and there's non-education, first of the police force, and second that they're state nationals. Yes, they are growing. I'm sure tactical civics are growing too, but it's got to get to equal points where you are noticed, and I don't know if 1% is big enough, because you got to have all your ducks in a row. You got to have education there, and you got to have a force, and the
half
political,
of 1% of every county, though. There's over 1 million person in that number. Over 1 million people.
But in Olmsted County,
it's 850.
Yeah, I don't know if that's enough yet.
Yeah, but
That's
the
a good
beauty,
start,
the
yeah.
beauty of the organization, though, is with that number. So very similar to the Old Testament. And again, without God, none of this is possible. That's what changed my mind and my heart towards this organization, because it was hopeless. And when I was in despair, saying, I'm scared. I got children, and now I got a grandbaby, and I don't want to go to prison for the rest of my life. What are we going to do? What happens when they come to my door and they try to take my firearm, or they come to my door and try to take my kid because I don't want to have him vaccinated, or whatever the case may be? I don't want to go to prison for the rest of my life. I don't want to go down those old roads. I gave my life to Christ and changed my ways. And when I saw this, I was like, wow, a light bulb went off. That's the solution. It's God. It has to be God. Without him, none of it's possible. And so the 850 people in the story of Gideon and the 300, the 30,000 they brought didn't leave. There are a lot of people who've heard me talk and heard this and seen the video that sit back and they don't have action. They don't join, they don't learn the material. There's a whole library of free material. All the books that are sitting out there, they're phenomenal. They do a really, really good job explaining about the grand jury, about the militia, how it's going to implement, and what do you actually have to do? You're going to sign up. Now what are they going to expect of me? The only expectations is to learn. These things are supposed to be volunteer-based. They're supposed to be county-based. The militia is supposed to be like the 4-H or the Boy Scouts. It's a family thing. It's not guys running around in ghillie suits with their ARs crawling through the weeds trying to tar and feather a politician, although that could be part of it, hopefully. But anyways, the reality the reality is there's a lot of different jobs and a lot of different duties in that organizational structure, that there's pieces for everybody involved in that. But they've been bastardizing it for over 50 years, that when you hear the word militia, you're not hearing what it really is. And they do a really, really good job of teaching us what it's supposed to be, what it was meant to be, what it's supposed to be used for, how to implement it, how to put it back in place, how to practice it. God bless the National Guard, but there's not supposed to be a National Guard. There's over 280 federal organizations, good, bad, or ugly. They're not supposed to be there. There's only 18 enumerated, or maybe 20, depending on who you ask, duties of the federal government. And that's what they're doing right now, is they're crushing a lot of them, hopefully all of them. But when they do that, every National Guard office is supposed to be run by a county. And guess what organization is supposed to be operating that equipment and those buildings and the functions that they have there? It's supposed to be the county-based militia. But there is none. Well, I shouldn't say there is none. There's not any legal or lawful one that's available.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Oh, wow. You got me very interested. Yeah, one of my main things I'd like to know is there a game plan for Minnesota? As
Yeah.
as a young
So
man with a family
they had
myself.
mentioned 5,000 members republic-wide. There is 80, Phil just said there are 87 counties. We're in 44 of them, with active members right now. We're at over 8,500. When that video was shot, they said 5,000. We're at over 8,500 members republic-wide. And remember, that doesn't seem like a lot. And we have, I think there's 14 in Olmsted County, about 198, I think, in Minnesota in a whole, with the membership that we have right now. But there are a lot of people that will not get involved until the ball starts rolling. And they're sitting back and they're watching, and they're all for it. They think, yes, I love God, and you're completely right, and all that stuff is accurate and true, but they're just not going to take the initiative to join it, learn it, get access. I mean, it's time-consuming. I just been listening to it. I don't like to read very much, so I listen to the PDFs on tape that they offer. I'll read the ones they don't have. One of the best books that I've ever read next to the Bible is the Tax Honesty Presser, where he gets into the IRS stuff, and it's pretty interesting, very interesting and eye-opening for me. But there's a lot of meat in the trainings and in the teachings and in the books that they have available and the Zoom calls and the seminars that they have online for everybody. There's just an education push of all of this content. And so once the ball does start rolling and these ordinances are mass submitted for the county grand jury and the county-based militia, then a lot of people will jump on. So that million will grow exponentially. After Gideon won the battle, all the rest of them that weren't allowed to go with him pursued the enemy after that and got involved with the war and the battle after it was already won.
Yeah. So could we walk through these? I'm totally new to this, and it's
Sure.
intriguing.
No,
Can we walk
again,
through these action items, especially maybe three. What does
Sure.
that look like? What are we trying to get a legislation through the state government? Is this something?
No, this is county government, right down in Olmsted County Courthouse.
So
They're legally supposed to have a website on how you can go learn and be a part of the grand jury. They found other websites in other counties in the U.S. that are, how they make white text and white background, and there's nothing on them, but they're legally there, but nobody can find the data or the information on it. So when you ask people, the only thing they know about grand jury is what they've heard on Fox News, CNN News, or somewhere like the propaganda. Like, who are we to be a part of a grand jury? It's an old standing, before America was even around, there were grand juries. And so it's an old standing system, and it's laid out in our Constitution, and they do a great job on the book about that, about how to learn, how to be a part of it, what it looks like, how to process it. But a lot of times too, we've been so pacifying of learning anything. We just want other people to do it for us. That's the day and age we are. We don't want to learn any of it ourselves. Yeah, yep. So I don't think I think a volunteer-based would be a registration to be a volunteer, and then you'd be picked out of a pool, just like you are right now. Have you ever been notified that you're for jury duty? Anybody else in here, jury duty? Everybody knows how to get out of jury duty, but nobody volunteers for it. And then there's a reason for that, because again, they've bastardized the process of it like, oh, I got to take off work to go. I love going to jury duty. I've gotten called twice. I loved it. It was awesome. And sitting in and hearing the case and being able to give my opinion on it. And I was in one where it was everybody against me, and in 2 hours, everybody was on my side of the fence. And I'm a salesperson, so, guess that it is what it is. But the reality is it's a duty of ours. It's not optional. And that's what we've been told. It's a duty of ours. And we've been kicking it by the wayside for 100 years. And so there is teachings on all these bullet points on how to learn about them. It's just, are you willing to do it? That's the real question.
Yeah, I've got one here. I've heard, this is the third time I've heard a presentation on tactical civics, and this is the third time. It's really not coming very clear at all to me. I mean, I see actions here, 1 through 7, but I don't know what the magic is of that percent. I don't know from what you're talking about what you mean by learning civics, but particularly number 3. Number 3 says push through our grand jury and constitutional militia ordinances. Part of me thinks you're saying the ordinance exists and we've got to go get them to live by it.
There are a lot of counties that have ordinances already.
Okay.
Yep.
But there's some that don't.
The majority of them don't have them.
By pushing through an ordinance, it means getting something enacted. And for us, that seems to be the county commissioner board.
Right.
But you talk about it being the people and not them.
Yep.
And I get this mishmash of we're going to work politically to get commissioners that are on board that are going to...
Yep. So the commissioners are going to get run out of their job, and somebody who's tactical civics friendly is going to get voted into it.
So this is going to have to be political. You're not going to get past.
Yep. This is all legal and lawful. Yep. This is not outside of that. Thank you. It's not outside of the legality of it. It's within the legality of what everything's been established to do that.
I understand that. I'm just not hearing your presentation really putting the political nature on it and the need for a political action. It sounds like you're presenting something that can happen.
Yeah,
independent of that.
Yeah, I tried to wrap my brain around, what's the difference going to be? Why are they going to listen to us when we go in there? And therein lies the problem with all of it, is they don't listen to us anyways. So then what? So what do we do then? So I apologize if that's unclear to you, but all I know is that when your numbers come together, which is one of the most difficult things for us to do as citizens, is to come together and agree on any one thing. When that happens, that's when that's when their eyebrows goes up, when they know that they can't do things that are illegal. They can't be a part of illegalities and get away with it.
Isn't that political activism?
Maybe.
We've all been trying to get enough voice.
Yeah. And where is it though? Yeah. Yep. You can't just sit back and expect somebody else to do it for them. Like, they can go into the school board meeting and they can shut down the mics and they can get up and walk out. Guess what happens when the commissioners do that? We follow them. And because that's not the whole part of it, they're not going to be going anywhere. Their offices are going to be within the counties that they represent. You're going to be able to walk into their office every single day of every single work day there is until they either do what you say or they resign. And that's what's going to happen. And that's where 1,000, 1,500, 2,000 people come into play. And that's why it's so important for the numbers part of it. Yep. Yeah. This is constitutional. Correct. Yep.
These, what they're calling grand juries, what they're calling grand juries in this country for God only knows how many hundred years, are not legitimate grand juries. Grand juries are supposed to be county grand juries, the way Patriot was trying to get back. And if you give that 1.5% or whatever,
Yep.
to push the commissioners, yeah, they're gonna resist. But when they find out that you are going against the Constitution and opposing the will of the people, and personally, I believe that with what Trump has been doing to restore the republic, it's lining all up for this to get
Right.
back.
I agree.
We need to do our part when, whatever they do, if they use EPS or whatever, and shut down and announce all the corruption and unbelievable atrocities that have been going on, not only here, but around the world, the people are gonna be ready to say, okay, we're gonna get back to what it was originally intended to be. So when
Yeah.
we get to this 0.5% or whatever, now we've got some flow to
Yeah.
make them listen.
You know, I came with a question tonight, and you know Steve Green, Flashpoint? Rick Green, I mean,
Rick Green.
Flashpoint?
Yeah. Yep.
And, you know, he's got Patriot Academy, and biblical civics is what he teaches. And he's in Texas, and they put 1 million people through it.
Wow.
And it's very active. Now, do you know what that is? And, you know, this is kind of new to me as well.
Yeah.
So, you know, they're teaching, and they're talking about training leaders. You know, they're training leaders, and people are coming up and running for office, and they want them to be aware of the Constitution. So,
awesome.
Which,
Yeah.
you know, you're kind of like brothers and sisters here, maybe. And
Yep. And a lot of you'll hear something if you do get involved in tactical civics called existential theories, and they're not good or bad. They're everything from the Bigfoot is real to, you know, Mother Teresa assassinated JFK. Everything in between there, and they're all okay, but we're not going to take part of it in this organization. And so a lot of the, you know, bigger groups, that's great, teach the civics. There's a whole bunch of them. There's probably hundreds of them out there that are, you know, Tea Party and, you know, all this different, you know, somebody's mentioned the nationals, state nationals, and all sorts of different groups that are running out there teaching Constitution. Some are even teaching, like, you know, maritime law and natural law and all that other kind of stuff, and that's all good and it's super interesting, but that's not what tactical civics is. Tactical civics is specifically the Constitution teachings of how to operate on a county level with the grand jury and the militia, and how you can enforce the Constitution, and that's the specifics behind it.
And we don't have that in our
Right.
current sheriff, and he's pussyfooted around the topic the last time I heard him
Right.
talk about it, but, so,
Well, and the sheriff was actually a tax collector for the crown back in the day, and so it's another law enforcement piece that has some authority in the pecking order, but they're still underneath the people. So the grand jury and the militia supersede the sheriff's department. So if you have a corrupt sheriff, you bring indictments against them, and the militia can arrest them and put them in jail.
Because she brought up the sheriffs. How many of you know the police, what police stands for? Policy enforcement. Do you know what police do? Now, I'm not coming against police. They're policy enforcers that work for the mayor. They do not swear an oath to uphold the Constitution. So, that's why it's so important. Sheriffs and deputy sheriffs swear an oath to uphold the Constitution. The militia would work with the sheriff's department unless the sheriff's department is corrupted. That's when the militia comes in. The militia backs the grand jury. The other thing with a grand jury, say, Rebecca, you're a grand jury, and a real grand jury, she walks into the courthouse, she is in charge over that whole courthouse, all of the clerks, everybody that works there. Grand jury
Has
have
all the
authority over everybody in that courthouse. And if you have an example of an attorney that comes in, even the highest attorney, county attorney, any kind of resistance or problem, a legitimate grand jury member throws their butt right out of the building. That's the way it's supposed to be. That's what we the people means. But we've had it hijacked and taken away from us, and you can see the results. Who's going to enforce?
Yeah, the militia.
The militia. No, you can't fire them, but yeah, right.
Yeah.
That's the militia.
That's the militia. That's why they're the two entities.
Yeah. When he said there's not supposed to be like a military and everything as we know it today, that's exactly right. Go right into the Constitution. The first couple of pages, you'll see that.
Yeah.
Hey. Okay. Thanks, Nate.
Yeah.
We're friends on Facebook. I go by Joe Archivist because I don't want people to know my real name because I troll liberals on Facebook a lot, and I don't want them to throw Molotov cocktails at my house. This is the second time I've attended a tactical civics, and you are way more articulate and better spoken. There still are unanswered questions. Some people have mentioned state and national, and you don't know maybe what that is. We've got some really good people in the BPOU. That's Basic Political Operating Unit, Olmsted County Republicans. They're a part of that state and national. And basically kind of what some of them kind of believe is that, like, taxes are unconstitutional, and like your mortgage, you don't have to pay your mortgage if you become a state national, or you don't have to follow our gun laws, Constitution. You can have any type of gun and bring it anywhere. And I just haven't really met anyone who's been able to actually pull that off in reality.
Sure.
And so I know that's not you. I'm just know that it's been mentioned just to let people know whatever that kind of is. And then another aspect is the militia piece. So, especially under the Biden regime, there's been a lot of mainstream legacy media articles talking about how they had made militias unlawful or illegal. And so, Constitution, that's not constitutional, but we live in a world where the state can take custody of your child if the parents don't want to change the gender of your child. So there's this, what the Constitution says and the way it's supposed to be, but then we have this real world, what is actually happening in front of us, which is not constitutional.
Sure.
And that's what I'm concerned about.
Yeah. No, and again, that's what goes through my mind and many members' minds is it's plain in the Constitution that any law that aligns itself illegally against the Constitution should not be enforced or acknowledged. Where do you go with that? You know, and again, until we are willing to risk livelihood, freedom, your finances. Look what they did in Canada. They seized all the bank accounts for the truck drivers. So, I mean, how far away are we from that? Like your free thoughts that you have of where you want to vote, who you want to vote for, and they can do the same thing at any degree and any level. It's a frog in the boiling water. They just slightly turn up the heat until we're all cooked. And so eventually we have to do something. And this book right here, and again, this is all free as memberships. It's $50 a year or $5 a month. They're very vocal. Join for $5, download all the content, all the PDFs, and then cancel your membership. You still have access to all the Zoom calls. You got all the material. It's not about that part of it. But we wanted to have these out. If you're interested in the hard copies, I'd just take a Goodwill offering for $10. If you don't have it, you can have them for free. We just replenish the books for them for the seminars. This book is phenomenal. It goes into and it's super thin, and it's a fast read, and is really it gets the whistle wet so that you can go deeper into understanding of what it actually is. Same with the militia. This one's a little thicker, but this is the 2.0, the updated version. This is actually very, very informational about the militia and how it implements practically. And so all of these books are designed for practical consideration. Somebody mentioned taxes. This is one of the best books I've ever read that he wrote, David Zuniga, the founder of Tactical Civics. It's called A Tax Honesty Primer. It's eye-opening and shocking, and it's one of the best ones I've read. There's 220 million eligible taxpayers in the United States. 65 million of them never pay. They just don't want 2/3 to know that the other third doesn't pay and doesn't participate. And he goes into great depth of his process and how he legally stopped that participating in that aspect of it. Because we've been taught for 50, 70 years, it's your civic duty to pay taxes. It's your civic duty. Like, how are we going to have roads and how are we going to have a fire department if you don't pay your taxes? Unfortunately, none of that comes out of our income tax. And so it's theft, and it's taxation without representation, and it's completely illegal. And he goes into some of that stuff, and all of these books are designed. This is one of the first ones, The Great Reset, and it's all about your mindset as a part of the republic on what it means and how to go forward. But here's the biggest problem: nobody wants to take time to learn it. So I've been doing this for over a year and a half, and we're still at like 12 people in Olmsted County, or 14. We need 850. Yep. And that's not asking 850 to join the militia or join the grand jury. It's asking 850 people to learn what it all means and how it works. That's really all it is. And whether it's an hour a month or an hour a day or an hour a week or whatever it is, we just wanted somebody else to do it. And I think that's the big problem.
When you reach 850,
Yeah.
what's that going to turn out?
So there's counties already that have the 0.5% in them. There's like one of the biggest ones obviously is Texas. Florida has a big membership group in them. They're not going individual counties. We're gonna do them all at the same time. Yeah, no, I think no, because the counties are going to work together. So I think when you got like some of these rural counties where you only need 50 people to have 0.5%, and if they have a hard time getting up, like Hennepin County, go up there and try to find 0.5% of the people in Hennepin County, and it's going to be almost just like Olmsted. Yep. No. Yep. So what they'll do is they will file these organizations in every county across the republic at the same time. That's one of the main goals. And then once those are established, if you get into that, once the ordinances are established and people know how to go online, not talking about the tactical civics members, I'm talking about the general public, and they know how to go online and learn this information. They know how to be a part of the grand jury and be a part of the militia and not have to, take pecking orders from a bunch of things they don't agree with. Then there'll be a whole nother slew of, how many people in Olmsted County do you think would stand up and join this stuff just to go against the conservative mindset? A lot? Not that many? How many people are out there in Olmsted County that just don't get involved? I heard a statistic that only 30 to 40% of the public, the eligible voters, even vote. They don't even care. They don't even go out and do nothing. 30%. That means 70% of the public doesn't even give enough hoot to even go vote. Greatly, because it's life-changing stuff when this stuff starts to change. This is the way to shatter the status quo. Yeah. Yeah. But where are those 850 people going to go? Mm-hmm.
You're probably